All right, let's jump right into this. When we think about personal development, we usually picture, self-help books, daily affirmations, or just endlessly trying to fix our perceived flaws. But what if we completely flip that? What if we approach our growth not like a repair shop, but as a high-stakes strategic game? In this explainer, we're unpacking a really fascinating source that argues true success isn't about morphing into someone else. It's actually about ruthlessly identifying and leveraging your innate, natural strengths. We're going to see exactly why playing your winning cards is literally the ultimate strategy for success. To set the stage here, the source opens with this brilliant battlefield metaphor. Just imagine for a second that you're a commander, stepping onto a battlefield. You look around at your troops, and, well, your army isn't exactly perfect. You've got this massive, highly skilled unit of archers, but your opponent? They've got a staggering number of horses and heavily armored cavalry. They've got the speed, the raw power to charge. So you're faced with a serious philosophical question. Are you going to sit there and cry over the horses you don't have? Are you going to panic because you lack the rushing power of your enemy? Or are you going to ask a much, much smarter question? Where do I position my archers?
That question right there perfectly illustrates the core thesis of our explainer today. Notice the massive contrast in these two mentalities. You've got the foolish commander who goes into battle completely obsessed with what they lack. They literally burn all their energy mourning the calorie they just don't have. But the brilliant commander? No way. They don't waste a single second on what's missing. They are entirely obsessed with every single advantage they do possess. They look at their archers and think, okay, how do I get these guys to the absolute highest vantage point? How do I make this terrain work for me? How do I turn what I actually have into a devastating advantage? Because victory, whether in war or just in life, it doesn't come from crying over the pieces you lack. It comes from meticulously, unapologetically positioning the assets you actually hold.
Section 1. The illusion of flaws. Let's talk about living life backwards. So how does this battlefield metaphor actually translate to our daily lives? Well, here's the heavy truth. Most people live their lives completely backwards. They treat their entire existence like some endless, exhausting repair workshop. You know the type, spending decades aggressively trying to fix every little flaw, completely ignoring their ultimate weapons in the process. Now, don't get me wrong, it's totally fine to work on yourself. But if your entire life is just this desperate attempt to patch up your weaknesses, you're leaving all your winning cards sitting totally untouched on the table. This is exactly why leveraging your natural strengths wins. It gets you out of that gloomy repair shop and actually puts you in the game.
The source gives some examples that capture the tragedy of this totally flawed mindset perfectly. Take a look at the first example. You've got someone who is naturally attractive, right? Someone with a physical presence that just commands attention. But instead of leveraging that obvious advantage to open doors, they spend their life trying to hide it. They force themselves to appear unnecessarily deep. And honestly, they just come across as incredibly fake, kind of like a bad, brooding philosopher. Now flip it. You have a highly charismatic person, someone with this absolute gift for speaking, who can captivate literally any room they walk into. But instead of refining that superpower, they waste their life obsessing over their physical appearance, trying desperately to look like the first person. It's a tragic irony, really. People constantly run away from their greatest, most natural advantages. And this leads us right into what the source calls the endless cycle of lack. As humans, our nature just defaults to craving the missing piece. We instinctively lean toward whatever is strange or foreign to us, mistakenly believing that the secret to our success is the exact thing we don't have. The naturally quiet person tortures themselves wishing they were this bold, loud extrovert. The highly social person wishes they had some sort of quiet, mysterious aura. The poor believe wealth will just instantly cure every internal void, while the rich quickly discover that money definitely can't fill an empty soul. The single people seek marriage. The married folks regret their choices. It's a loop. It's this endless cycle of lack where we just assume our failures are because of what we're missing. And honestly, it results in massive strategic failure. Moving on to Section 2, the strategy of nature. Let's find some true leverage. Okay, so how do we actually break this cycle of lack? We need a serious paradigm shift. True, unstoppable leverage only comes from aligning with your fundamental nature. Think about it visually for a second. Take a powerful, dominant tiger and force it to swim in the middle of the ocean. It's going to drown. It just won't perform. Take a fish and toss it onto dry land, and well, it's a tragic comedy. It's going to suffocate. Yet in their own proper environments, each of these creatures is the absolute, undisputed king of its domain. The source makes this crystal clear. Sure, we all have flaws that require some discipline and correction, but you cannot spend your life trying to rewrite your fundamental coding. You are a king or a queen only in your proper domain.
This brings us to that famous proverb cited in the source. Fortune favors the bold. We've all heard it, right? Wealth, success, opportunity, they naturally gravitate toward the bold. But here is the much deeper layer the source explores. True boldness isn't about faking confidence. It's not about puffing your chest out. True boldness only emerges when you are deeply, intimately comfortable with your natural strengths. When you actually embrace what you're naturally good at, you suddenly fit perfectly into the puzzle. You act with this natural audacity because you aren't pretending anymore. You're just executing on your innate advantages.
Section 3. Identifying your ultimate weapon. Let's talk about finding your actual advantage. Now, it's one thing to just say, hey, use your strengths. But how do we actually find them? Well, to identify your ultimate weapon, you first have to bypass what the source calls the braggart's paradox. We often have this mistaken belief that our greatest strength is the thing we loudly brag about the most, but usually it's the exact opposite. Think about it. A person with a terrible singing voice is often the loudest one belting it out at karaoke, right? They're desperately seeking that external validation. Meanwhile, a naturally athletic, physically fit person just walks into a room effortlessly. There's zero posturing. True strength requires literally zero forced effort. It just naturally flows right out of you.
So to find your actual advantage, you need a proven methodology. And the source outlines 3 really distinct steps for this. First up, use the mirror concept. The source actually references an Islamic hadith here that says the believer is the mirror of his brother. Basically, you have to listen closely to your surroundings and to the trusted people who genuinely want the best for you. What do they actually see? Second, track your unprompted compliments. Are people constantly commenting on your unique appearance, or maybe your way of speaking? Pay close attention to those recurring themes in the feedback you get. And third, identify your effortless leadership. Where in your life, or maybe your job, do you naturally just take the reins? Where do people naturally defer to you without you ever having to demand authority? The things you do subconsciously, without feeling any strain at all. Those are your weapons.
This actually brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of self-awareness. The creator of the source material shares their own real-world case study here. Back in 2019, around the time of the pandemic, they stubbornly tried to force their way into the gaming content space. They poured so much effort into it, but the traction was just painfully low. They stubbornly wanted that specific path to work. But honestly, that's kind of a childish way to look at the world. Eventually, they matured, opened their mind, and actually listened to the feedback. People were constantly praising their delivery, their speaking skills, their ability to explain complex concepts, so they made a pivot. They leaned entirely into presenting and explaining. And the result? Massive, exponential success. They finally stopped forcing the wrong path and started leveraging their natural, innate toolkit. This is absolute proof of why leveraging your natural strengths wins out over stubborn, brute force effort every single time. Section 4. Executing the winning move. Time for some tactical realignment.
All right. We've identified the weapons. We've officially stopped crying over the missing horses. Now it's time to execute the winning move, your tactical realignment. Look, if you lack horses, do not put on armor and try to be a knight. You are going to fail. Instead, you elevate your archers and you meticulously choose the high ground. Now apply this directly to yourself. If you're naturally attractive, stop hiding it. Utilize your presence. Deliberately put yourself in rooms where that advantage shines. If you're naturally articulate and have a silver tongue, please do not sit in silence. Speak up, engage, and draw the crowd to you. Success is absolutely not about completely changing who you are. It's about diving to the very bottom of your innate toolkit, pulling out your absolute sharpest tools, and deploying them ruthlessly.
The ultimate takeaway of this explainer is this. The world does not need a second copy of someone else. Seriously, it already has that person. What the world actually needs, and more importantly, what the world actually rewards, is a focused, refined, and perfectly utilized version of you. Start treating your life like a strategic game. Learn the rules, accept the specific traits you were dealt, stop wishing for a different hand of cards, and start playing yours with absolute mastery.
So, I want to leave you with one final, pretty stark question to consider. Think about the battles you're facing right now in your career, your relationships, your personal ambitions. If you entered a war today, what is your real weapon? Because once you find that honest answer, that is exactly where your path to victory begins.